What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Stereo Therapy. I'm your host, Lisa. Of course, my co host over here is Justine, and this is episode 90. On this episode, I was joined by Kevin Marcoux, and it was such a great conversation. And I know if you're looking at this and you started it, you're like, this is a bit of a longer one. It's for good reason. There was just so much to discuss with Kevin and what he's involved in. And I think he was just so open about so many things that I didn't want to cut anything. So all I cut is anything that I felt like I went off on that I'm like, people have heard this before. I don't need to talk about this again. But when I'm in conversation, yeah, we're talking about it. It's the first time we're talking about it. So yes, there's so much to discuss. So I just want to get right into this episode. As always, at the end, all the links, go find everything Kevin is involved in. Check him out, give him a follow, all that good stuff. But here's my conversation with Kevin Marcoux. But what are, if you can remember, your favorite memories of falling in love with music, whether it was like an artist, an album, or just, some people say in the car? Was it for you?
I guess where I grew up and when I went to school, music's always been a part of the curriculum. My school district was very adamant on making the arts like a large part of our lives. So I think it was second grade we had like chorus forced down our throat. So it wasn't even an elective; is you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like the first time I was really exposed to it, at least the performance side of things, and outside of just from the listening side of things. My dad was a big music fan growing up. He not too long ago gave me like his entire record collection,
Wow.
like Springsteen, Queen, AC/DC, like Zeppelin, all that stuff. My dad was a big,
Yeah.
classic rock fan. So there was always music being played, and whenever we were driving in the car, whatever was, he was, in late 20s, early 30s when I was a kid growing up. So Nirvana, Pearl Jam, all
Mm-hmm.
the grunge stuff, which that was my starting place to getting into the music that I play and listen to now, was all that stuff. So that was really, really big for me. But yeah, I just remember falling in love with just the performing side of things from a very young age because of school. And it wasn't even like like I said, it wasn't an option for us, but that wasn't a bad thing. And I remember taking chances with that too. Like anytime, like, hey, does anybody want to do a solo for something? Shot my hand up in class. I don't know why,
Mm-hmm.
but I did it, and I always took those opportunities. I just fell in love with it, and I don't really know why. No one in my family is really a musician outside of my aunt, and she really wasn't a musical influence for me. I just knew that she played in high school and college. That was it. My dad's not a musician at all. My mom's not a musician at all, and no one in my family is a musician. So I don't know really why I took to it. I have no idea.
Oh, that's so cool. Cause yeah, I know chorus was, yeah, you had to do it. But that's
Yeah,
really cool to hear like yours, although it was somewhat similar experience, it kind of led you on this different journey. And I mean, obviously you play bass, so you play an instrument, you have that musical background, and that's so cool. The rest of your family doesn't, but you do.
I I don't know why. And to be completely honest, bass guitar has just really been a focus of mine for the last, we'll say, tops 5 years.
Hmm.
I started, like I said, the chorus was really the start, and I was just a singer up until now. Like I've fronted more bands and doing vocals than I have done anything else. And then
Hmm.
past like third grade, it was, if you don't want to do this anymore, you don't have to do it. And it just became elective. So I remember fourth grade, I did viola. I hated my fourth grade teacher,
Hmm.
and my parents were really big fans of her as well. But you're stuck with her, so I'm like, I have
Yeah.
to stick with her. But if there's an opportunity to get out of class somehow, go do that. But I really wanted to play drums, and drums were not made available to us until fifth grade, which was band. You could do orchestra in fourth grade, but you can only do band in fifth grade and onward. So I needed to figure out a way to get out of the class in fourth grade. So I chose viola for some reason, did that, and then I broke my arm towards the end of the year, so I didn't get to finish playing, because I also played hockey as a kid.
Hmm.
And which whatever, that actually the breaking of my arm got me out of way more class than viola did, so I wasn't that unhappy about it. But fifth grade, finally got the opportunity to try out for band for drums, which is really the only thing I wanted to do. If I'm going to play an instrument, I want to be a drummer in the worst way. I
Mhm.
go and try out. There's one spot left in band, and I don't get it,
Oh.
and that broke my heart. And the teacher who was doing band at the time, she said, well, if you want to try out for something else, what would you want to try out for? And I said, I don't know, tuba.
Mhm.
I think I was probably being a sarcastic ass at the time. I was like, that's the
Yeah.
first thing that came to mind, tuba. She's like, all right, she gave me a tuba, try it out. She's like, all right, well, I can give you a tuba spot if you want it. I go home, I tell my mom, hey, I didn't get drums, but I got tuba. She goes, absolutely not. No, go back and tell her you're not doing tuba. Like, okay, all right. I go back, and apparently, and I found this out a little while later that I guess a friend of mine, she had a crush on me in fifth grade, and she also tried out for drums, and she got the last spot and turned it down so that I could get that spot and try out again. I still have I haven't talked to this girl in years, but I if I could find her again and just say
Mhm.
thank you, I would, because it's little things like that that gave me a music career.
That's so cool. Like I
Yeah,
get like that's so cool like that ended up that way cuz
yeah.
wow.
It was I ended up thankfully getting the last spot after retrying out, and I did stick with I didn't stick with school band after that. I didn't love that, just the way that that was run. It just wasn't my thing.
Mhm.
But I kept playing drums. I went back into choir for school, and did really really well with that, and took that super seriously to try to get some sort of traditional classical training as a singer. And through high school I did that as well. I took music very very seriously and had good connections with the choir director there. And she me and a couple other people, she took us out and actually spent time outside of school to help us work on our voice, if that's something we were interested in, which it was. And I still, and I it all in the background. If I wasn't in school, I was at home playing drums for like 3 hours a day, and that was
Okay.
my thing. That was my thing until college. And then there were some friends in town that were playing in bands, and there weren't many bands in town, and we were the only group of like hardcore kids, punk kids, metalheads. And my buddy Jake was, he was much younger than I am, but this kid could play drums better than I ever could. And I
Mhm.
was a good drummer, but this kid was awesome.
Mhm.
And at that point I could sing, so I'm like, you know what? I'm a fool for getting in the way of this dude. We're starting a band. You're playing drums. I'll stand in front and just pretend like I can scream or something. And then we did that, and that was, I haven't really focused on drums since then. So that was about 2010, 2011 when I was leaving high school. I do actually. I had a gig last night. The cover band I'm in, the singer of that band, had her debut solo show, and she asked me to play drums for that. So it was like my first time playing drums live in 10, 15 years, something like that.
Wow. Yeah,
So
no,
it was fun.
I give credit to anyone because drums always seemed really cool. And whenever I would play like rock band, I was like, I would
Mm.
love to play drums. I had friends that were drummers, but I could not for the life of me. One of my friends growing up, Ryan back home, he would, he was a drummer and he was like, all right, I'll teach you a couple things. I was so lost. I was like, there is a reason, like, if you're good at this and you can do it, like, why only certain people have the ability to do this? Because
Right.
I was just like, oh, how hard can it be? You do that. I was like, all right, no, there's no musical anything in I mean, rock band is where it stops. It starts and stops there.
Yeah.
But so I give credit to people like you or other people that can at least play an instrument because it's like, yeah, no, I can't. But even like talking about like because you're in South Jersey, right?
Yeah.
So for
Yeah.
you, because I think now I'm in Central Jersey. So like there's like the Asbury Park, all that.
Yeah.
But for you, what is your music scene like over there?
So I actually grew up in Central Jersey. I'm originally from Princeton,
Okay.
or I'm originally from West Windsor, Plainsboro, but my parents' mailing address growing up was Princeton. So I'm from Princeton. There was nothing there.
Mhm.
We in West Windsor and Plainsboro, it was a very bookwormy environment, very upper middle class environment, and everybody was had this expectation to, you graduate high school, you go to college, you get a great job. But they made sure that if you're going to have some sort of creative background in some capacity. If you're going to be a music guy, that's fine. You're going to be a theater person, whatever you want to do, that's fine. um, Regardless, you need to have some sort of a foundation rooted in creativity, which I absolutely respect and believe in. That no matter
Mm-hmm.
what you're going to do, you could be working on Wall Street. You should be a creative person in some capacity, because it's going to help you with critical thinking skills down the line in
Yeah.
anything. So growing up, there really wasn't a music scene, and in town there was nothing. Me and my buddies were the only, maybe one or two bands that cared about doing something outside of like high school talent shows. As we got older, left school, getting a car and having the ability to just leave town was huge, because you can go, 20, 15 minutes away to the closest town that has a VFW or something, and you realize there's a punk scene there to some extent. For us, it was meeting up with like the Princeton proper crowd and South Brunswick, and learning that there's this huge, there at the time, this gigantic metalcore scene that
Mm-hmm.
was like, it was bustling, and when everyone knew each other, but it was a great bands, fantastic music. And that somehow carried over to, I guess, the shore area, like Freehold, and even extended over into Asbury. At
Mm-hmm.
that time, Asbury wasn't really anything. It was sort of on its decline. It's not like it is now. Asbury's awesome now.
Mm-hmm.
And that my senior year of high school going into college was humongous for me, because it got me the opportunity to meet a lot of people, and that had similar interests, and be able to share musical ideas. I sort of we would kind of mingle with each other's projects and play a lot, and create, and it was really really fun. And through I eventually, the band that I had, I was fronting a band called The Artwork of, was, we sort of fancied ourselves somewhere in between Every Time I Die and The Chariot.
Cool.
Just but did it not nearly as well as they did.
Mm-hmm.
um we eventually made our way down to South Jersey. I think just through scouring the internet, I found the Chariot was playing some venue down in South Jersey, way down in Vineland.
Mm-hmm.
And just on a whim, I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna email somebody, see what are the chances we're gonna be able to open up for the Chariot.
Yeah.
And I got a response back like an hour later, and they said, "Yeah, can you come down for a meeting?" Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll sure,
Wow.
no problem. Came down, drive my car, had like 4 donuts on it. So doing like, it took us like 3 hours to get down there. It's only like an hour drive.
Right.
Get down there, we have a meeting, and it was the guy, I guess it was the owner's kid who owned the place. He met with us, gave us a stack of 75 tickets, and said, I need you to sell all these as pre-sale. This was back in the day where it was like you had to pre-sale X amount,
Right.
or you're not playing, whatever. Which anyone at that point will tell you, just say yes and then deal with the consequences later.
Right.
So we said, yeah, no, this is not going to be a problem for us. Took the tickets, whatever. We found out, like, I don't know, maybe few weeks later, because I get a phone call. I don't know how this guy got my number, but it was the Live Nation agent calling me saying, "Hey, this kid overbooked the show by 7 bands."
Whoa.
I get, like, just to understand, he, like, I think the venue was going through some rough times. So the way that this kid was thinking was like, let me just get anybody who will sell for us to get money for the door. And I'm like, I kind of
Right.
get that. But I'm like, listen, man, I got tickets in my hand. There's nothing stopping me from just giving these out to people. So
Right.
let's figure out an alternative situation here. If we can't play the show, what can you offer us? And he goes, how about the farewell tour for the Bled? And I said, I'll take that. No problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was like one of our first South Jersey shows. Through that, we met a lot of people, and in particular, was at the time they were called Elliot Gray. They were in time called Teeth for Teeth, and they were a staple in what was the Hamilton music scene, 10 years ago. They became very, very close friends of ours, and through them, I was introduced to this gigantic music scene down here that, in my opinion, was better than anywhere else, at least in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my focus. Like, how do I get myself down here playing with these people? And then in time, the bands change, whatever. I found myself permanently in South Jersey. Part of that was meeting my wife, and I'm now down here for good. But the music was just so much better here in comparison to what we had in Central Jersey, which
Mhm.
really was just Champs Bar in Trenton. And they were great, but it's hard to build a long lasting scene off of just one place, and off of just a handful of bands that really don't have much interest in doing anything outside of just playing that one place every couple of months. So South Jersey sort of revitalized everything for me, and that was really when things got cooking. Yeah,
Oh, that's so cool. Cause yeah, like I moved here back in 2016 because I met my fiance. I was in Illinois and then we did long distance and now I'm out here. But yeah, when I moved here, that was almost when Asbury was what it is now, right? Like
yeah,
not what other people say. They're like, yeah, it wasn't like this always. But for me, that area has been so great for me with the podcast is
yeah.
meeting so many different people, so many, and just they're so kind. And I
Mhm.
had, which is so cool. But I mean, hearing names like the Blood and the Chariot, I'm like, that brings it back for me. Nobody has ever mentioned them. And for me, I'm like, that is so cool because that, like, that's although, like, I mean, I like the pop punk, I like that, but even Every Time I Die, I mean, I love Keith Buckley. I
Mhm.
got to see his new band play for Thursday in Garwood at
Yeah,
the Crossroads.
the
And
Crossroads. Yeah,
oh, it was just so cool to see Keith Buckley up there. Obviously, with many eyes, I had to like remember, I'm like, oh, this isn't Every Time I Die. Like, just
yeah,
because I love him so much. But it was like they were just so great. And even seeing like Thursday and their legacy they've left on Jersey, like that Jersey sound. And it's like, and now they're playing this little place, Crossroads, selling it out. And I get to now see that because, like, I
yeah.
mean, they would come to Chicago, but it's just different here in Jersey. Like, there's something way just different I've noticed, like being here in the venues.
It's a feeling. I mean, Thursday. First of all, I think to some extent, every band from New Jersey, at least in the we'll say the alternative realm, is trying to chase some part of being in Thursday.
Hmm.
They've left such a lasting legacy that every band wants to chase. But that's the Jersey. The weird thing about Jersey over time, you can go back and do such. It won't take you long at all to realize that this state for some reason has produced some of the best music ever,
Yeah.
and always has. And that's not even talking specifics to just punk or metal or whatever. Any Sinatra's from Jersey. Like
Yeah.
some of this state has produced some of the best musicians, and I've been trying to figure out what it is. I don't know, but maybe it's just this chip on our shoulders where we're not quite New York, we're not quite Philadelphia, and it's not until like it's really only been the last like 20 years that New Jersey has been able to really solidify its own identity by and large through, just sports or something like that. Like I'm a Rangers fan. I
Hmm.
absolutely hate the Devils,
Yeah.
but that's fine. And I'll also go. The Devils are not from New Jersey; they're from Kansas City, so that's
Right.
fine. Um, but we never really had our own identity. We were always swept up in the local major metropolitan areas, which has nothing to do with New Jersey.
Hmm.
And now we're starting to see cities like Asbury, like even Jersey City, Hoboken,
Hmm.
become these gigantic, fantastic spots that stand on their own. And I'm hoping that the work that the last 20 years has shown that maybe in 20 years it'll be New Jersey is its own thing now. Like we can stand up to New York City or Philadelphia. It's that probably will never happen, but
Yeah.
it'd be nice to see.
Yeah, like I mean, that's a huge reason why even before I met my fiance, I literally was like hearing the bands coming out of here and just that basement scene. I mean, I had it in Chicago, but just knowing what New
Yeah,
Jersey had, I was like, this is where I want to live. I want to live there or New York. And just that life brought me there is really cool because it's just something like whether it is that chip on your shoulder or whatever it is, there is
yeah,
something so special about being out here to me where I was like, all right, I'm gonna be challenged a little bit out here too, for sure, because it is a little more cutthroat than back home. But it's been really great to meet the people that are in it for the right reasons and have
Mhm.
these scenes because I'm like, I'm going to learn so much from you from being out here. So it's like a great thing. And I mean,
Yeah.
we got to talk about too, just kind of talking about the scene and everything, even bringing up Thursday, but tell all your friends you're in this awesome emo night cover band. And
Yeah.
I think it's great that like there's this crazy resurgence right now, right? Like of I mean, we have When We Were Young, Warped Tour, whatever is going to happen with that, right? Something, some way it's coming back. What do you think being in this cover band, like about this resurgence going on right now?
It is so, I mean, for starters, I'm there's a lot of music I'm learning for the first time through being in this band, and that's been fun. To be able to discover new stuff in my 30s is very, very weird. And even more so now learning how to play some of these songs that I've never known how to play. Like I said, I've only bass for me has only been fairly recent as far as my musical endeavors. So I'm learning how to play stuff for the first time. It has been interesting to see how receptive people have been to what we're trying to do. I knew when I joined, and I guess we've been rocking and rolling for almost 2 years now. I'm still the newest member of the band. I knew, and the sales pitch to me when to come try out was there's really not a lot of what we're doing yet, but this will be a hot commodity in the next couple of years. And we do, if you're going to do this, you don't want to be starting this when this is already old news.
Hmm.
Which I couldn't agree with more. And I'm like, I've never done a cover band before. At the time I wasn't really doing anything. And my wife sort of encouraging me like you haven't played in like 4 years. Why don't you try this out? It's a different thing. You've been
Yeah.
worried about trying to create for your entire life, so why don't you go and try something new and make some money along the way? And I'm like, you know what, that's maybe not a bad idea. At the very least, maybe I'll it'll force me to be a better bass player,
Yeah.
which for me was easy enough. Like it'll give me a reason to sit and learn how to do this better. And we've learned through this process because it's me and a couple of the guys in the band that really just that sort of manage everything from booking to everything, marketing, all of it. And we've started not really knowing what we're doing. We're not, it's we don't know what venues are going to say about us trying to pull screamy breakdowns if we're playing like a Senses Fail song or something, and we're just in a bar as a 90-year-old eating chicken parm in the corner.
Right.
We don't know if management's going to have a problem with us trying to do what we do when we bring 10 emo kids out and whatever, which is how it started. And now it's turned into, depending on the night and the venue, we got 400 or 500 people coming out and singing
Wow.
along, and there's not a single problem. No one complains because everybody's having a great, the bartenders are having a great time. We're being told by management that we have bartenders like purposely making sure they work that night when we're playing. One, because they enjoy the music and have a great time, but two, because they make great money.
Hmm.
Ultimately, what being in a cover band is you're there to sell drinks. That it's if you do a good job playing music, that's a sort of a bonus, but you're there to sell drinks. But this has become such an interesting thing, and to me, and it just sort of makes sense now. We are, millennials. We're the ones that are the newest people in charge of
Hmm.
everything, from government to just anything. A lot of us grew up listening to this stuff, and of course now it's going to be part of the pop culture now.
Yeah.
It makes sense that something like this is successful if you're good at doing it. The funny thing to me is that there still aren't many emo night bands. The majority of what emo night is, for the most part, are DJs,
Hmm.
which is cool. It's a completely different thing.
Yes.
But a lot of this comes from, us being in punk bands our entire lives, and playing out, and then having that translate to this, and the fact that there hasn't been more people like me doing it in this capacity, where you're actually playing in a band instead of really just hitting play on a
Right.
on a vocalist track on your computer. I don't quite understand yet. They're successful, and
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's just about having a good time. but I don't understand why there aren't more. And there are some, and I am seeing more and more sort of build up over time. But the fact that it hasn't, the fact that we're one of only a few, at least in the area, blows my mind. It still
Yeah.
blows my mind.
We had Drew Zimmerman from the Warped band.
From the yeah,
Yeah, and like he literally was talking about that same thing, that it's a different experience when we're a band playing these songs. Like they're meant to
yeah,
be played by a band. And he was so right in that, where I'm like, yeah, you're right. Because like, and again, not to dog on emo night, but I can do that like in my car. I can just hit
yeah.
it, like hang out with my friends and do it. It's a different experience when the band is playing those songs back and you can hear them, or just it's yeah, there's just nothing like it. So I'm glad to hear that you guys have been like drawing a couple hundreds of people is, to me, that, I mean, that's big for something like that.
Very short period of time.
Yeah.
We've been kicking our own asses the last year and a half, just trying to make sure that we do this the right way. We are, you know, we're older, and we understand that to do this requires time and attention to detail. But because we're older in our we're all in our 30s for the most part, you know, we've got lives, we've got bills to pay. We, you know, if we're going to do it requires a lot of time, so that's going to require money if it's going to keep us here. So there's ways to do that in the right way. And now we're sort of, I have a lot of friends that are in cover bands full time, and when starting this, I had to refer to them a lot for information. How do you
Mhm.
guys do this? How do you, you know, how are you approaching these venues? How are you even talking to these people? What are you charging? Asking simple questions. What am I missing? Why are we only getting paid $500 when you guys are getting paid 3 grand? How did you get to that? How long did it take you to get there?
Yeah.
And come to find out that really it's just confidence. It really just
Mhm.
comes out because everybody wants to be a business person. Everybody is just
Yeah.
chasing their own self-interest. We're no different.
Mhm.
We have a bottom line, we have overhead to cover, and that's ultimately what it comes down to. How much is your time worth? And like, am I going to go out and play that show and get nothing? I, or I would rather be home with my wife if that's the case, you know.
Mhm.
So this better be a good opportunity, and then we'll have some fun after that. Give us the ability to play, you know, by making it worth our time, and we'll have some fun. Now, of course, that's not every show is going to be like that, and we're also new, so we recognize that it's we still got a long road ahead of us, but things have been great. And people are recognizing, and honestly, bands like the Warp Band, and there's another band I think called the Emo Band.
Mhm.
Those are like the two biggest like emo night bands, like proper bands, at least in the country. And we've been looking at those guys and going and studying them, being like, they're doing it. Let's
Mhm.
learn from these guys. Let's learn from these guys.
Yeah.
That's super cool that you've had them on there.
Oh yeah, like it was like obviously not just the cover band. So you have Sleeper Creek too. So you got like so much
Yep.
stuff going on. So and
Yeah.
you have Halo that was released. And I know people are gonna kill me for this. And I know anytime I bring up brand new, but I think I got a lot of like on Halo brand new vibes almost like on their
Yeah.
back end though catalog. Like that
Hmm.
sound of like whether it was Daisy, even like a little bit of the guitar of like Devil and God, or even science fiction. I know a lot of people
Oh
didn't really like,
man.
but I feel like I got a lot of that in it. And I'm like, I'm either gonna get torched for this or it's gonna be a little spot on. So I don't know if
To-
has anyone's picked up on that.
yeah, oh my God, I wish Tommy was here. Tommy, the lead singer in Sleeper Creek. Brand New's his favorite band.
He said
Um,
I got Jesse Lacey right away. And again,
yeah,
I know like how people feel
Jesse
about that.
Lacey musically, nothing else. That's
Yes.
we'll keep it there just to
Ex-
be safe.
yes, to be safe. But I got it and I was listening to it again today because I knew I was like, all right, I'm gonna have Kevin on, so let me listen to it again. And it was just like, I swear, I'm hearing like almost Jesse Lacey-esque in this right
That's
now.
yeah, that was I mean, so for starters, I guess going back, Tom and I worked in a studio together for a couple of years. I was just there in a recording capacity, and he was there as a musical instructor, but with the idea of learning how to record more and more, try to get some ideas, almost like an internship, but you know, with actual benefits.
Yeah.
And I think I had some clients coming on. I always had like this open door policy. If you ever see my name on the schedule for recording, don't even ask. Just come through. If you wanna help out, I'll put you to work. I'll teach you whatever you want, no problem. And Tom would sit in constantly, and through him just kind of hanging with me and assisting me on these sessions, sessions would wrap up sometimes 4 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. We'd just be hanging for a couple hours, just talking. And I'd known Tom for years at that point. Him and I sort of played in the South Jersey scene together, so we'd known each other, but not really been close or really talked a lot. And I got to know him very, very well. We realized and learned that we had a very, very similar taste in music. We both had a humongous love for 90s alternative.
Mhm.
Him he's a musical encyclopedia, and that's for anything. It's just insane. But when it
Mhm.
comes to that stuff, he pulls stuff out of left field that you've never heard of before, and I go, oh, that's awesome. One day I happened to be on the studio computer, and he had a little folder on the computer, just Tom. Click it open, it's just a bunch of recordings that just demos that he made. So I'm like, let me listen and see what he's working on.
Yeah.
And the songs were awesome. Like they weren't like fully mixed or anything, but like he put thought into everything. And one of the songs was Halo. Um, and that was like, I think it was the first song that I heard, and I'm like, I think I talked to him like, what are these songs? He's like, oh, I just
Mhm.
get bored during lunch and I'm just like record these songs. I'm like, what are you doing with them? He's like, oh, nothing. Like my old band didn't like Halo. They didn't want to play Halo. So I don't know. I'm saving it for something. And I think I let that mull over for a little bit, and like he showed me some other stuff, and I'm like, it's too good to just sit on a computer.
Yeah.
And I think it originally started as, hey, why don't you track these? I'll track these songs for you, just to get them out. Like, let's make a Tom Whaley project. Let's just record them. I'll record them for free. I enjoy them enough. Maybe I'll play something on it if you want, and we'll just get them out. And over time, him and I got together like every day, every week for like a year. And over that year, it turned into, I think we have a band. I think we have a band now. Like we're working on these songs together and developing them. And it got to a point where like we need other people, and I guess we're a band now. And that sort of I was supposed to be playing rhythm guitar in that one, and then we both realized that I shouldn't have a guitar in my hands, and I loved bass way more anyway. So I decided to play bass for what was Sleeper Creek. We got other people into the fold, started practicing, building up these songs more and more, and then just started playing before we even had a name. Like I think we someone asked us to play, and in the month before our first show, we went from not having a name to Sleeper Creek, and we only had 2 songs. So we wrote like I want to say probably 5 songs in like 3 weeks or something like that. But Halo was the first track that we had, and Brand New has always been in the background. Tom is constantly referring to Devil and God, and every time we're in the middle of recording an album right now, and every time we're talking about production styles, listen to this
Mhm.
from Devil and God, listen to this, like the way that they decided to do this. And I'm like, I'm on board, man.
Mhm.
And it's sort of resonating with me. I'm finding another love of music, and that I've never really had before, especially in my 30s now. It's awesome to feel this way again, empowered by music again. And Tom is a reason for that. But it's funny. Everyone picks up on the Brand New vibes. So I guess
Mhm.
we're doing something something
You
right in that regard.
Yeah. Oh god, they're my favorite. I mean, funny enough, that's how I met my fiance because we both had brand new tattoos
Okay.
On Instagram, and then there was like, "Oh, you like brand new," and then, friends, and then there's like, "All right, well, let's," and so it's like that's why when I bring it up, it's like, "Listen, I get everything with brand new and revolving it, but
Yeah.
the music is just it's
It's
so
top notch.
good. It
It's
is
top
top
notch.
notch and what they became and just everything, and I'm like, "Yeah, no." So when I was listening to that, I was like there were a couple times I kept listening. I'm like, "Wait a second. All right, now with this part, there's this part." So it was so cool where I was like, "This is really needed right now," especially with bands, like them. Obviously, they're not around anymore, but to have that
Mhm.
sound, I was like, "Oh, it's just so cool." So I was like, "All right, I get to
Yeah.
push this out. This is so exciting." And obviously too, I mean, we have to talk about secret house recording you have too. I'm like, you have so much. I was just like looking at all this stuff, like, what are we going to talk about? But so I want to know with you is where did that, because you're obviously co-owner, where Like, where in your journey, like, how did you get started with that?
This is another thing, kind of going back to why I enjoy music in the first place to the extent that I do. I don't know where that came from.
Mhm.
I likewise have no idea why I enjoy recording and production so much. I I started playing in bands in some capacity when I was like 12 years old, as a drummer, and through that middle school, definitely before high school, I got I got hooked up with, a group of guys that were in town, and another group of like deep misfits that were super into like the weird, like the really out there style subgenres of metal, like huge black metal fans, death metal fans, thrash stuff that I loved when I was a kid. And we would get together, a couple times a week in the one kid's parents' house, and he had his own little room, had, walls of amps, drum set, gigantic drum set, and an entire production station. And the one kid in the band I guess he was something. I guess he was part of the AV department in high school. So he was a couple years older than I was. He was just like he was a humongous knowledge base for anything production. He just knew everything at such a young age, and I think just being around the technology and all the equipment just inspired something in me to like just hone in on a love for something.
Mhm.
Because up until that point, honestly, my dad in particular was always like, he always made sure, like, if you're have fun with whatever you're going to do, but make sure you're chasing something in life so that you have direction. And I think because my dad didn't necessarily know exactly what he wanted to do with his life, or maybe more to the point, never really given the opportunity to do the things that he loved, he wanted to make sure that, like, if you're going to do something when you get older as a career, like, find your passion. And for me, it was always history.
Mhm.
And up until, late middle school, early high school, I kind of always had the thought in my head that I might want to be a history teacher growing up, until that moment where I started like really getting into production because of these couple of kids. And the few other bands we had in town would go over to, next town over, as a kid who had a studio and in his garage. And I talking to that dude. His name was Paul Howell, still a fantastic recording engineer in New York. I think through talking to him, I found out he went to NYU, did the whole program there. And I'm like, that's it. I want to go to NYU for recording, and that's what my life is going to be. That did not happen because NYU is way too expensive. And
Yeah.
but it that I for whatever reason, I was just drawn into it from just being around those people. So I over as a kid, I would start, for Christmas every year. Can I get a mixing board? Can I get a Shure SM58? Can I get, these little pieces of equipment, as I'm learning more about the process on my own, which at the time was literally just like, message boards and stuff, trying to learn stuff because YouTube wasn't really around yet. Or was like just very, very young. So it wasn't quite the YouTube university that it is now. So trying to understand, I was always a little like probably a step or two behind other people self teaching themselves the stuff, until I got to a point where, I was in, at least in West Windsor and Plainsboro, I was probably the only kid in town that had at least enough adequate recording gear that I was recording friends' bands. Not great. I didn't have a great set. I did not have Pro Tools at the time. I was doing a lot of live stuff just through a mixing board, but learned a lot through that process. And that over time, I think this summer before my senior year of high school, I did get a chance to go to NYU. I was accepted into like a summer program for aspiring audio engineers. It was like a 2-week program. I did that. I had that. My parents gave me the option. Do you want to go? You want to go to NYU for 2 weeks in the summertime, or do you want to do your senior trip for Disney? And I'm like, I don't give a shit about Disney. I want to go
Right.
to NYU.
Yeah.
So I did that. Learned so much. There was a bunch of kids there that had like the same taste in music that I did too. Almost everybody did. There's brand new fans there. It's huge
Mhm.
Every Time I Die fans.
Oh,
At the time, I
cool.
remember I was super into 4 Years Strong, so I
Yeah.
made a huge connection with people, and I learned a lot about recording the stuff that I wanted to record there. And from that point on, I went to college for a year and a half, maybe. I went to the Art Institute of Philadelphia, which is no longer around. And I dropped out after about a year and a half. I didn't love at the time what I was learning. I did not feel that because it was an accelerated program, it was terribly conducive to how I learn things, which is very hands-on, and it sometimes takes me a little bit of time to get to where I want to go. Unfortunately, when it's an accelerated program, you're not really afforded that opportunity. And I was like, I don't want to be wasting any more money, my parents' money on this stuff.
Yeah.
So I left, and you know what, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go get an internship. And I went to go get an internship. Had a couple of internships in that time period for about a couple of years until I landed at Blue Light, which is where me and Tom, singer of Sleeper Creek, met, or really started, working on stuff together. And I was at Blue Light for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So,
That's
and that gave me the ability to really hone in what I do now. And then from that point on, it's all Secret House now.
wow, that's so yeah, because I give a lot of credit because I can't think about like not having YouTube because when I started
Hmm.
this podcast, it was immediately like, okay, so the first go around of the podcast wasn't good. I was with like a completely different co-host, be completely different that. And the audio was just awful. Everything about it, and
Right.
I didn't have my hands on it, so I was like, "Oh, let me just get my hands on it." But I'm like, "Can I do this?" Thank God I had YouTube because YouTube
Yeah.
helped me so much learn how to help, match volumes, do this. You have programs like Adobe. Like I cannot imagine being you at that time where you didn't have that, where like someone like
Yeah.
me who has no, like just no like kind of either education or even hands-on experience, I can edit a podcast episode where like what you're doing is way advanced than like, all right, here's like an hour episode, just match the volumes, get everything a little good. Like, wow, I can't imagine because even there's times in the beginning where I was so struggling, like, how do you do this? Like, oh, wait, there's a video for that. Okay, let me find this person. This person will show me how to like kind of sort of do it enough so it sounds okay. And like,
Right.
and I get by and I'm lucky I get by on those YouTube videos, but it's like, yeah, like you didn't have that back then. There was
No,
nothing of that.
you just I think the thing that I was told a lot, and I will tell people constantly is, if you, to a degree, if you can afford to do it, break your gear.
Mhm,
You at some point you're probably going to have at least a basic idea of how signal flow is going to work, how to make things, to try to do the thing that you intend them to do. May not know all the ins and outs. With like the first big piece of gear that I had was a 24 input mixing board. It was just, it's not great. It's a Behringer Eurodesk. I remember it specifically. It's simple though. Like there's EQ knobs, there's a fader, there's a gain knob, there's buttons. Push the button,
mhm.
twist the knob. You see what you find out what's going to happen pretty clear. If you trust your ears enough, you'll figure out what it's going to do. And then if something sounds like if it doesn't sound right, yeah, you turn it down a little bit. If you smell smoke, you probably shouldn't do whatever button you
Yeah.
push. Don't push that again. It's I think a lot of it, especially back, probably 30, 40 years ago, when people in my position obviously didn't, they had even less than we have now, or
Yeah.
I had then when I was learning. It's button pushing, it's knob twisting, you kind of have to figure out. And that's also the same way that innovation is made, by just, sometimes you either don't understand and how something works, you try to use something for a different purpose than the thing was built for, and you find out something new. It's kind of how everything in at least in the production world is sort of elevated. Just
Mhm.
try, just try. If you are interested in it, try it out. You'll either find out something good or find out something bad. Either way, you're learning.
Yeah, that's so important because like that's what I did. Like when people listen sometimes, like we were on someone's podcast and they're like, "Oh, I'm having trouble," or they use like GarageBand, and I was
Yeah,
just like, "Oh my gosh!" I'm like, "That's not." I'm like, "Listen," and they're like, "How do you get sometimes your audio?" I'm like, "Honestly," I'm like, "I could never show you because it was just like hitting this, trying this. Let me try this. Listen to this." I said, and it was 9 times out of 10 me sitting there messing around with whatever, and I figured it out. I was like, "That's all I can
yeah,
tell you." I was like, and look, I'm like, mine is by no means perfect, but like I love what you just said. And like someone creatively is probably going to hear that. Like, because we, whether it's a musician or just anyone that can relate to that, is you can figure it out. I tell people all the time, like, obviously we're on different levels of that audio, but I tell people all the time, like, I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I figured it out. I made it.
yeah.
Anyone can do it. You can just, if you have that passion, but obviously I feel like you do have to further than the passion a little bit too, because something you're good at, there's no way I could. I even know, even if I'm like, oh, let me try and figure this out. There's no way. There's just no way. But kudos
I
to
don't
you.
think that's the case. I think passion is what makes you want to be better at something. With that said, I mean, anybody can learn anything. I
Yeah.
mean, there's, and especially now, I mean, it's even easier for people to learn production work. The pandemic was a perfect example of that. The amount of bedroom things that were created, and that's good. That is by and large very, very good. Obviously from a work perspective, when someone else is doing the job, it takes money out of my pocket and I can't work as much. But
Yeah.
ultimately, I am a creative person and I enjoy hearing the end result of people's creativity, and however that person gets to that end goal, kind of doesn't matter. Like, there, and especially these days, there's more and more musicians being created. There's enough work to go around for everybody. So it's also taken me a lot of like alone time, thoughtful reflection to get to that spot, because I've not always been the most level-headed person in that regard. And when I was younger, I was very defensive about the things that I do. I wanted to be the only person. I wanted to be the best person at
Hmm.
it. I had to be the best person at it. I never was, but I in my mind, it was like it's like this narcissistic level of needing to let people know that I'm the best and you should never do this because I'm here. You don't need to do it. I'm here, which is foolish. It's foolish and immature. And with that said, truly you could learn what I do. Everybody has learned what I do to some capacity. You plug in a microphone, you turn up a preamp, you're recording on Zoom right now. I don't know how to record on Zoom. So, and I'm probably not going to figure that out, because it's just trying to figure out how to connect my AirPods to my MacBook was problematic enough. So,
There you go.
you've already excelled
All
far
right.
past what I'm going to be doing with this.
So we got this.
Yeah,
And obviously our podcast and talking about your craft and everything in music,
yeah,
we showcase the importance of music and mental health. So I would love to
yeah.
know how, whether it's music or your craft, how has that aided your mental health and your mental health journey?
It's been a double-edged sword, honestly. I obviously find some sort of relief and happiness from this because I continue to do it, and I don't have to do it. I choose to. With that said, it is not, it's a struggle. I've constantly been in various bands to different levels of success, and ultimately, when those bands fall apart, or don't work out for some reason, that tears you apart inside, especially when you've poured in every last bit of yourself emotionally, your time, your money spent on those things, and that's never coming back. Like, the most valuable resource that we have as human beings is time, because
Hmm.
it's gone. Once it's gone, it's gone. For me, that's something I've always been aware of, and as I got older and became one of the, as I would put it as a kid, one of the weird old guys at the shows,
Hmm.
that became more apparent to me that if I'm going to continue to do any of this stuff, it has to be worth it, and I have to do it right. And before Tell All Your Friends and Sleeper Creek, which, by the way, both of those debut shows happened in the same weekend accidentally.
Mhm.
So that was an exhausting weekend for me because the last time I had played a show before that, that was St. Patrick's Day weekend 2023. So last year, I hadn't played a show since January of 2018 before that. In the middle of that, that's a 4 year window that I 4 or 5 year window that I basically didn't pick up an instrument in that 4 or 5 year period. The pandemic was in the middle of that. I was, in a band. I was fronting a band that I started. For various reasons, I left that band in the middle of the pandemic. I just didn't want to be a part of it anymore. And I didn't, and I kind of got into this mindset of, what am I doing? Why do I even want to do this anymore? And I thought about, I just kind of selling everything, selling all of my musical equipment, my recording equipment, everything. I didn't find any pleasure from music anymore. Was barely listening to it. I didn't find any new bands that I liked. I didn't want to listen to the old bands that I liked. There was nothing about it that was pleasing to me. And I don't know so much if it was the musical process or music in general that it was. I think it was just probably a spot that I was in my head. I turned 30 in 2021, so that was a large part of it too. Is that it was some sort of unfair pressure that I had put on myself in my 20s that I should be at some place when I'm 30. Otherwise, I've deemed myself unsuccessful. And when I turned 30, not really thinking about it, I sort of collapsed. I had this humongous, like, it wasn't a good period of time, and it took me a while, probably the better part of that year and a half, to realize that the goals I had to articulate, really, to get myself out. I had to articulate what it was that the goals that I had put on myself before I got to 30, what I thought was an adult. And all that was one, be on the road with a band in some capacity, be it performing or in a roadie somehow. I wanted to record people professionally, and that was the end of my list. I had done all of those things, and before I was 30, I also got married and bought a house.
Yeah.
So not only did I accomplish the things that I set out to do, but I did them way before I was 30. And I there was other things that I never thought was going to happen. I never thought I was ever going to get married. My parents got divorced when I was a kid, so I never really thought about marriage. So
Hmm.
that was just a bonus. I found someone I loved, and then that
Yeah.
happened. And home ownership as a millennial, forget
Oh,
about it.
oh,
This,
even now, right now, we're in the process of buying a house. Like even right
yeah,
now, I like want to like just run.
congratulations.
I just want to run through the hills. Like right now, especially here in Central Jersey, I'm like, oh my God. But
Yeah,
again, like even that feeling you're saying, like there's certain marks you want to hit. Like that's we feel like it's just is a weird time in your life.
yeah, yeah. I had to really sit and kind of I had to kind of look at myself and be like, dude, you've done the things you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Maybe you expected them to be done differently, but maybe, to be fair, you didn't. I didn't really have a great idea of what it was. I didn't have great expectations. I think
Hmm.
I probably set the bar too high. Is probably not the best way to do it, but it just things I expected different things. Realistically, I did the things I wanted to do, and I am continuing to do them. So the fact that you're 30, that I'm 30, what
Yeah.
meant absolutely nothing. It was just another day. It was another day. That's all it was. And from that point on, I started to heal myself. I started listening to music again. I started rediscovering, and coincidentally, we're coming out of the pandemic, and music is starting to be active a lot more again. And you're starting to hear the fruits of that unfortunate time in the world, that people created these great things after being locked up for so long. For me, one of those things was Sleeper Creek, and Tell Your Friends was bubbling underneath the surface, and those happened at the exact same time for me. So the last 2 years for me has been stressful. At just listing the things that I currently have going on stresses me out.
Yeah.
But I'm thankful for it because it keeps me busy, sometimes at the expense of my poor wife, who has
Yeah.
who it because all this stuff takes me away from home.
Yeah.
But ultimately, and she recognizes this too, that I'm I recognize my own mortality being older. I'm not a spring chicken anymore. So when I'm home at 4 o'clock in the morning, it takes a lot out of me. I don't want to do that forever.
Yeah.
Uh, my goal has always been sitting in front of a mixing board and recording bands, being able to work with bands on making their music the best it can possibly be. So that is my focus there with Secret House, is finally being given the opportunity to make records the way that I want to make records without any other impediment, so to speak. Which, not being a studio owner in the past and always having to kind of be at the mercy of whoever's responsible for the studios that I've been working at the time. You can do a lot, but of course you always have someone to answer to. And that's, I respect that, but I want to do things my way. So that's what Secret House is all about, is me being able to finally do things the way that I've wanted to do them always. And it's awesome. It's fun. It's a learning experience because I'm starting a business with buddies of mine, but it is the most exhausting thing at the moment, and it's so expensive.
Oh.
Holy God, is it so expensive?
Oh, I can almost imagine like that's yeah, like just oh, things like that, but like kind of have someone like you on that's on the other end of things, or
Yeah,
actually on both sides, right? You're like musician and that.
yeah,
And even for mental health, what do you use to keep your mental health in check? Like obviously music is one of them.
yeah.
Um, in Secret House. But other than that, like, is there like some people say like walking, journaling, things like that. Like, what do you do to kind of keep your mental health in check?
I'm trying to get into more into like an exercise, a healthier lifestyle now. I have a personal trainer that the last couple of months I haven't seen too much because we've been developing the studio more, been in the thick of
Yeah.
it. But I've been trying to use exercise to try to just get into a mindset of trying to have a little bit of normalcy in my life, and without the chaos that music brings to it, because it throws you into a very weird schedule. And I am regrettably not in therapy right now. I want to be, so I do by no means knock it. I don't know if I constantly tell myself, I just don't really want to pay for it yet, and I
I
don't
hear
know if that's
that.
just an excuse for, if it's like realistic and I just don't actually want to pay for it, or that's something that I'm telling myself because I'm just not ready to open up about things, and that, or discover things that I may not want to discover yet.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I know at some point that's going to have to happen. But I guess keeping my mental health in check is something that I try to. I mean, my wife is kind of instrumental with that because I'm constantly tired. I'm constantly stressed, and that, I unfortunately, because she's the one person I'm around often enough, probably gets, the unfortunate side of being, of her significant other being grumpy more often than not. So I kind of rely on her a lot to keep me in check, and she does. She whips my ass, metaphorically
Hmm.
speaking, when I get out of line, and that is instrumental, because it's very easily to kind of lose sight of reality when you're so stuck in your normal ways, and it's grounding. So she's probably my biggest mental health tool, because she's also going through therapy herself, so
Yeah.
she's very knowledgeable with that stuff, and helps kind of put things into perspective for me as well. Medication, I recently got diagnosed with ADHD, which was kind of a lifesaver for me in a way, because I've been dealing with I had been dealing with ADHD my entire life, and it's like things that I recognized as a kid that I just sort of wrote off as, oh, I'm quirky.
Mhm.
Like and this is, I'm not kidding. I've never read a book a day in my life. I can't, and I know how to read. I can't concentrate long
Mhm.
enough.
It's oh, I can't believe you said it because that's me. I'm in the process of looking into getting diagnosed because
Yeah.
I'm like, there's too many things now with TikTok and just so many things. Or even this podcast,
Mhm.
people will say things, and I'm like, forget the anxiety disorder. I
Yeah.
think it's ADHD. And I'm
Yeah.
with you with that book. I have not, in high school, I struggled with that same thing because I can read, I have the ability
Mhm.
to read. I cannot concentrate. If I get to the
Yeah.
end of the page, I'm like, what did I just read? Okay, I have to
Yeah.
read it all over again. It was, yeah. So, oh gosh, yeah. I feel so like seen right now in that because I've always been that way where people are like, read, read, read. And I think I finally
No.
finished within the past year, I finally finished Game of Thrones, a book,
Oh
but
my god.
it was audio. It was audio and it had to be
Okay. All
audio
right.
because I can't sit there and read.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
Yeah. No, it was footnotes. The footnotes website was my best friend all through high school.
Yes.
Summer reading reports. I, I somehow managed to skirt by
Yeah.
every year on that. We just blew right past it. I can't, and now that I'm in my 30s, it started to really affect my work, and like turnaround times for recording projects were too long. The Glass Fires project, oh my god, that, I mean, for there was many reasons that that took forever. One of there was several that were out of my control, but part of them was just my general work ethic and trying to figure out what the hell is going on with me. Why can I not sit here and get
Mhm.
this done? I
Yeah.
love doing this, so do it. Like I don't understand what the hell's going on. And
Yeah.
finally talking to somebody, and it was a long road even when talking to doctors about it, because initially there was a depression diagnosis,
Yeah.
get medicated for that, and then after getting medicated for that, and having my body adjust to that, it was sort of like, okay, cool, I recognize that seemed to be doing something, but I still can't get out of bed in the morning, and it's not like I don't feel awful. Like, I can't be bothered because I feel the weight of everything I have to do today. So
Mhm.
if I have to get up at 7 o'clock, I I'm not getting up until 7:30. It's just not going to happen, and that's after me like hitting the snooze button at least 20 times, and then
Mhm.
me not going back to sleep, going, all right, I come on. I'm looking at my legs and I go, get out of bed, get out of
Yeah.
bed.
Yeah.
And after you know after a couple of months of having the depression meds in my system, and then talking to my doctor about these things that are still going on, he gives me the screeners. Oh, all right, it seems like you definitely have
Mm.
ADHD, and getting treated for that, and that was sort of a game changing process. Getting medicated for that, in the beginning, was great, was awesome, and then I think my body just adjusted to the medication like quicker, so it's started to wear off, and I'm like, this seems like this is coming into abuse territory very, very quickly if I
Mhm.
take any more Ritalin.
Yeah.
So I'm still trying to figure out that process. Largely though, I think I don't know. I think I've kind of just dove in headfirst into everything I do to keep myself in check. And my mental health, my positive mental health for me has always been tied to positive things happening to the projects that I'm working on. And anytime that I felt bad, or like deep, deep down, like it was a darkness that you could not shake. It was for reasons that I probably should get myself out of those situations. And fortunately, at least I'm sensible enough to always remove myself from situations that are super negative. And that for me during the pandemic, when I quit that band that I started, I it wasn't good. I didn't want to be a part of it anymore. It just wasn't making me feel good. And to be honest with you, the moment that I told everyone that I was leaving, it felt like a giant weight was off my shoulders. I had no plan, and I didn't play music for another 3 years after that. But it still felt awesome to not
Mhm.
have that weight on my shoulders. So even this thing that I love is not always the best thing for your mental health. Um, I I don't know why this just popped into my
Yeah.
brain, but we're talking about mental health and with the cover band with Tell All Your Friends, we were constantly thrown down our throats as fans of emo music. Um, this marketing tactic of come be sad together
Mm. Yeah.
when you were young was always the same thing,
Yeah.
and that's always, I don't know, that was sort of mind numbing to me because I'm like, I didn't listen to this music to be sad. I was
Yeah.
just sort of a fucked up little kid,
Mhm.
and this music made me feel better. So why are we using our negative mental health as a marketing tool
Mhm.
and and not necessarily putting any light on it. Like it's, I don't know. That was the one thing with Tell Your Friends is like, number one, we're never once putting like be sad on
Right.
shirts or using that like, oh, this is the good band. This is if I'm gonna be in a cover band, this is the band for me because they get it. Like, no, we're this is
Yeah.
if we're gonna do it, it's gonna be a gathering of we this made us feel good in terrible times.
Yes.
Come have a great night so you can feel good again. That
Yeah.
was what this is about. I never understood that. I never understood that one bit. I still don't.
No, you see it now. You see like I'm when you said that, I was like, I remember seeing like, I don't know if it was emo night or like in LA or where it was or New York, but it was like they had those balloons that was like, oh, sad as fuck or whatever it is. And like all
Yeah.
these balloons. And I'm like, again, like I don't know. It's like you just said, like that's what I ran to. I was a child as a teen. My parents divorced, so I really went into having music was so important to me, and that's why I clung to that music. That's why, like even now, with it coming back and the resurgence, I'm like, yeah, yes, I'm going to go see Census Fail again. Yes, I'm going to go see
Yeah.
Thursday again. This music helped me through like some really tough stuff. You know, one of my favorite artists of all time is Anthony Green. You know, Circus
Yeah.
Survive, Alice Dunes, all that, and like things like that. It's like that's why I cling to it. Like, it's not, I want to be
Yeah.
sad or like, oh, it's cool to be sad. Like, no, this is why it's so special and why, like, in our 30s, I want to go see them again. You know, I mean, not at the prices they're at, but I want to go see them again. You know, like, I mean,
There's music that I can't listen to now because of how I felt at the time that I was listening to them, and it sucks because it's I there is I don't know if you know the band Fear Factory at all.
yes, yeah, yeah,
They're like a new metal band from
yeah,
like the early 2000s.
yeah,
There is one album of theirs. I don't remember what the name of it is, but if I remembered it, I can't listen to it. There's a few songs. There's something when I was listening
yeah.
to it a lot. There was just a period of my life that there was some stuff going on at home that was dark,
Hmm.
and it's I can't like it made me feel good at the time because it was great music and the type of music where you hear it for the first time, you get goosebumps. Every
Hmm.
time I would listen to it, I get goosebumps because of its association with whatever was going on in my life at the time. I cannot bring myself to listen to those things, and I just do not understand. I understand because it's an easy sale. So let's be sad because it's everyone wants to make a joke out of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like that's maybe part of the reason why whatever barriers emo bands by and large, be it a cover band or an original band that's sort of trading on an emo name, uh, they're gonna hit some sort of wall because they take it as a joke. They
Hmm.
still take it to some extent as a joke, and if they truly don't understand it, it is entirely a joke to them, and that makes things so much harder for anybody who's actually trying to do something good with it.
Yeah.
If that bothers me, that bothers
Yeah.
me a lot.
Oh yeah, no, it has for me. And I'll see some people in the comments of some things like that and say that like what we're talking about. And I'm like, all right, I feel seen. There's other people out there that see like that's an issue, what's going on with that.
Yeah,
Or like even like, the title of like Sad Summerfest, it's Sad Summerfest. Like I get it, but it's like again, and then they'll have the black balloons with, sad or sad emo kid or whatever it is. I've seen these balloons at these fests. I'm like, I know I have. They're the shirts. And
yeah.
it's and I don't know. But it is a special era, but there are certain things of that era where I'm like, all right, they're using this as a marketing thing. I get it. And it's working with the younger kids, but I feel like, if we're in our 30s, we're kind of like, hey, wait a second, like, I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
not. Maybe.
maybe we're expected to just take it on the chin and move on. It's like, well,
Yeah.
this is still sort of the way that I make a living for myself.
Right.
So like, and I take it seriously enough. Like the music, the creation part of the music is something that I benefit from emotionally.
Mhm.
So, and people who are hopefully going to be listening to it are going to be as invested in the listening of it as we were in the creation of it. And I don't want to be taken as a joke for that. Like
Right.
I'm not we're not busting our asses to be laughed at
Mhm.
by someone, or for it to just be like looked upon in some weird way that it had no intention of being taken. And that's, I don't know. I know it's such a non-topic to be fixated on, but it's something I think about enough where
Yeah,
it bothers
no.
me, you know?
I'm glad you brought it up because, like, that's
Yeah.
something, like, for us, like, this I think so many other people will resonate with too and be like, "Yeah, I feel that way too." And, like, it is not a joke and things like
Yeah.
that, and you don't wanna be that, and oh my gosh, but this has been so great having you on here, and before I let you go about your day, I wanna know I'll have all the links for everything you're a part of, but is there anything you're excited about that's coming up that you wanna share?
Ooh, well, there's a lot of things. This is the problem. I'm in the middle of things that we're getting to prepare a lot of things that I can't share.
Got it.
But to kind of give Sleeper Creek's recording an album. There's a
Okay.
lot of people been asking why there's Halo is the only thing that's been out since the
Mhm.
beginning of the year, and it is purely because we are focusing on making sure that we have, I'm going to say at least 11 more songs out that are just as good, if not better. And we're doing it ourselves, and it's going to be good. I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised when they hear what we're going to put out next. So that, I mean, hopefully people, any musicians listening to this, if they need a new studio to check out, we're in Philly in Manayunk, so we're accommodating. And then if you got some time to kill, come see, tell all your friends. We
Yeah.
got a lot of cool stuff coming up, and we're going to be announcing some pretty big shows in the next month or two. So yeah, I would love to, I would love to meet people like that too. I mean,
Yeah.
I need to, I don't live in Philly, but I'm traveling in Philly enough. And Philly is a place that we love playing. I've always loved playing, and it's for some reason it's never with Philly bands. And
Mhm.
so it's always with South Jersey bands just crossing the bridge. I like meeting people. I love hanging
Yeah.
out. I love grabbing a drink and being like, what makes you want to keep doing this? It's
Mhm.
kind of, I mean, this podcast is great for that too, because it kind of gets all those icebreaker questions out of the way that I would have anyway. But I want to meet these people, especially if they're
Mhm.
local, from
Yeah.
10 minutes away.
Yeah. Like, oh, so cool. And again, yeah, this was so great. And all right, guys, that was my conversation with Kevin. Again, there was so much to discuss in this one. So it was really cool also to get a different take and have somebody that is an audio engineer and everything they're involved in and how their craft has played a role in their mental health because we haven't had that completely yet. So it was a really cool thing. Again, it was really cool to connect with Kevin and talk about Sleeper Creek, which I'm really excited for. And obviously tell all your friends if you're local over here, you're in the South Jersey, Philly area, anything like that, because I think there's a need for bands like that. And again, I loved everything Kevin was open to sharing and talking about. And again, I felt really seen about the ADHD conversation we had because it is something that I am still on that journey if you listen to this show. So it's one of those things that I think so many of us will and can relate to. But yeah, give Kevin a follow. Go check out Secret House Recording. It's really cool what he is doing over there. And yeah, it's just really, really cool to have someone like Kevin on our show. I could have kept him for a lot longer, and I did. We talked about a lot of stuff. So, but yeah, as for our show, we are going to skip next week and not have an episode come out. We just had a lot of reschedules and a lot of cancellations and things like that. And rather than stressing about putting out an episode, we're going to take a break for a week and more conversations, more episodes will be out there. So if you are liking this thing even just a little bit, give us a follow, give us a star rating on any app you are listening to a podcast positive rating and review goes a long way for not just our show, any podcast. It really would help us out and we would appreciate it. And we will see you guys next time. All right. Bye, guys.